Hello friends, welcome back to the next session on operations planning, scheduling and control. Now let's begin with our learning. In this particular session, we'll be able or try to understand what is the meaning of make or buy. Make or buy is a type of decision which an organization has to undertake in the long-term perspectives. The learning objectives. At the end of this particular session, the learners will be able to understand what do we mean by make or buy decision, explain the importance of make or buy decision, understand what are the various activities that have been undertaken for deciding whether to make or whether to buy, and what are the factors that affect the make or buy decision. Now let's first initially understand what do we mean by make or buy decision. In a particular organization, when a series of activities are being undertaken, we always usually try to identify what amount of goods and services will be required. Those particular goods and services maybe have a certain consideration that they may be either purchased from the open market or the goods may be produced in-house. That is, the amount or quantity of raw material that is been required may be available within the department. So, certain operational activities, certain outsourcing activities which are needed to be avoided, all those decisions have been undertaken by the management team. And when such deciding of activities is being undertaken about whether to purchase the product from the open market or whether to make the product in-house for a certain concern is the concept of make or buy decision. The applicability of make or buy decision can be made usable either within the organization or a certain third party vendor may be appointed for conducting such activity. The make or buy choices is also known as the outsourcing decision. Wherever, if we feel that if organization is not comfortable or if it does not feel or if they feel that there is a time consuming activity for the make or buy decision, then accordingly the decision may be outsourced and accordingly a third party can come forward and look for the making or the buying decision. The factor with respect to the make or buy decision is the concept of cost and benefit analysis is always needed to be undertaken. The cost and benefit analysis focuses on what cost is being associated with a certain product, what are the various increases or decreases in the cost of a certain product, and how the resources can be utilized in order to see that there is no excessive or increase or decrease in the production or the general price level. For effective evaluation of prices, a corporation must always take into account and see that what is the procurement and storage of certain goods, services, and commodity. So when all the goods and services are commodity, they have been utilized, it is at a certain level that the management has to take a strategic decision about whether the raw material or the product that is been required as a part of a supplement, it should be manufactured within the in-house producer, that is, we have to make it on our own, or we should buy it from an open market. And hence, the decision for producing a certain product from the in-house department or purchasing from the outside vendor is called the make or buy decision. Now, what are the key highlights for a make or buy decision? The various key highlights for a major make or buy decision is whether to manufacture the product within the organization or whether to bring in or purchase the product from a third party vendor. There are various choices that are available in terms of make or buy decision. Likewise, outsourcing is one of the example, including the weighing, the cost, the benefit of manufacturing in-house, and the outsourcing. So in this case, any one option of the organization can be adopted, and accordingly, either you may outsource a product, either you may manufacture a particular product, either you may weigh a particular product, and accordingly, the cost benefit analysis may be ascertained. So based on the cost benefit analysis, one can come to a conclusion and understanding about whether the product is feasible or suitable or not. The various factors with respect to the labor expenses, the cost expenses, the experience of the storage cost, the supplier contract, the lack of adequate volume, and so on. All those costs and factors are needed to be taken into consideration, and then the decision of make or buy is needed to be ascertained. And hence, make or buy decision is a very short-term decision in which the decision may go hasty, it may go wrong, and accordingly, the organization may suffer losses at several stages. Usually, it has been observed that the make or buy decision is being based on the quantitative terms. So, quantitative analysis of a business organization is been essentially required, and based on that particular concern, the cost-effective option is needed to be selected. If a cost-effective option says that the making of a product in-house in the department is quite effective or profitable, then accordingly the organization must go to make, that is, manufacture a certain product. If the cost benefit analysis or the cost effective option shows that purchasing the product, that is buying a product from the open market from a third party vendor, is quite effective and profitable, then accordingly the product should be purchased from the open market. Now let's understand what do we mean by the make or buy decision. When it comes to the in-house manufacturing, the various costs are always being associated and designed with respect to the product, with respect to the factors of production, that is the land, labor, capital, enterprise, resources, materials, availability of labor, maintenance charges, the cost of material, and so on. So for those particular concern, manufacturing in-house may be a costly venture for a business concern. But in case a particular cost of labor is been of a controlled nature, then accordingly the buying decision from the market or the making decision of in-house product into the market or the organization may differ as and when the need arises. So control on the overhead expenses is always needed to be identified, and what estimation of expenses are being undertaken, all those factors are needed to be calculated. The disposable income of a particular product, the disposable amount of raw material that has been utilized, where all these factors are needed to be calculated, and then a remnant, that is a byproduct, should be decided about whether the decision of making or buying is needed to be undertaken. Now let's understand what do we mean by value and non-value added products. So value and non-value cost that have been associated with the make and buy decision is number one, the buying the cost related to purchasing the product from an outside source. So it includes the price of the goods, any shipping or importing fee, and lastly, the applicability of the sales taxes. So the initial price of the product, which may be either given at the par, premium, or discount, it plays an important role for taking a decision about making or buying. Shipping or importing the fees. So any charges that is needed to be paid that related to the import duty, shipping charges, customs duty, excise duty, and so on. All those charges are needed to be taken into consideration for calculation of make or buy decision. And lastly, the applicability of the sales tax. So sales tax, as and when, wherever it is applicable, the decision also changes with respect to the what amount of tax is needed to be paid. In case of an indirect tax, that is the goods and service tax, that is GST, into existence, the valuation of commodity changes from state to state, but the IGST, that is integrated goods and service tax, and the CGST, that is central goods and service tax, remains the same. And hence the sales tax also needs to be identified, and what will be the chargeability rate also needs to be ascertained. Now, how do we choose the decision, or how do we make a decision of making or buying? As we have seen earlier, the make or buy decision is always a quantifiable nature, wherein the most cost-effective technique is needed to be selected, and based on the effective techniques, one has to come to a conclusion or a certain decision about whether to make the product in-house or whether to buy the product from the open market. Occasionally, qualitative analysis is also being addressed in terms of the make or buy decision, and accordingly, a corporation cannot quantify precisely about what will be the changes in the general price level, whether making will be more affordable or buying will be more affordable. So, based on the profitability, one has to come to a conclusion about what is more profitable and how it needs to be implemented or applied. When we say, or when we come to a conclusion of either making or buying a certain concern, the making a product into the in-house department is quite challenging, because we need to identify the lack of availability of resources, the lack of availability of knowledge, and so on. So what features or what factors do we have in supporting to the making or the manufacturing? All those factors are needed to be ascertained, and based on those concerns, the vital decision of either the making or buying is needed to be ascertained. So apart from the product activity, the focus on the knowledge, skill, and abilities of the employees or the workforce always needs to be identified. Now, let's understand why do we choose either one of those perspectives, that is either a making or either a buying. So in this particular case, a firm is dealing with all the operational activities which are into existence. So a certain activities which have been undertaken based on the circumstances, whether to produce or not to produce. If we want to produce, then how much to produce, the decision keeps on changing. So in this case, what happened? The decision, if it goes wrong, then accordingly it may incur or occur a loss to the organization. A trusted supplier closing down, a spike or a drop in product demand, or viable avenue for new prospects are all examples of those occurrences. That is, changes in the prices by the suppliers, reduction in confidence level between the vendors and the suppliers, or increase or decrease in the product or demand for a certain product, viable avenues with respect to the new prospect, that is when there is a certain flexibility into the market, usually the traders or the suppliers or the manufacturer change their respective trading conditions, and hence those particular condition arises to a certain conclusion, to a certain point wherein the person has to take a decision about whether to make or whether to buy a certain product, and hence weighing the benefits of a manufacturing concern about either buying a product or getting a benefit from the outside market through the perspectives of outsourcing is essentially required. In all these particular processes or activities, the cost benefit analysis is essentially required, and the organization should focus on considering the cost benefit analysis. So in this particular stage, we have identified that what are the various advantages and drawbacks of continuing the same road with respect to creating the position into the market. That is, when we go to the actual manufacturing activity, we need to either manufacture the product on our own, or either we need to outsource a certain activity to a third party. So when this particular activity is been outsourced to a third party, the manufacturing activities gets diverted, it gets impacted, and accordingly the decision of financial nature gets increased, because when a particular buying decision is been undertaken, the terms and conditions that have been laid by the buyer, that is the particular seller, and accordingly the coordination or the communication or the mutual agreement between the parties plays an important role. So influence of a company's decision on the manufacturing item also plays an important role, and accordingly the decision of making or buying gets impacted. Now, concerning about the supplier reliability, one may feel that the supplier may be reliable in providing those goods and services. But when those goods and services are not quite sufficient, they are not of a good quality, then accordingly based on those particular fact, the decision of operating the activities either at the local level, that is in-house domestically, or transporting it for someone else, that is outsourcing for a third party, this decision is maybe a certain concern of an hasty, and it may go wrong. So now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have understood what do we mean by make or buy decision, how do we make the make or buy decision in undertaking the goods and services, what are the various activities that have been performed under the make and buy decision, and the various components as to cost, product and inventory which have been related to make or buy decision. I hope you must have enjoyed learning at this particular session. Thank you.